Thank you. I'd like to thank the local Indian nation whose territory we're in for letting me speak here in their territory. I'd like to thank the Bioneers for inviting me. My name is Joe Munroe and I'm a Bioneer. So back in 2005, we, in my First Nation, Musqueam First Nation, that's the Cree First Nation in the Northern Prairies, at the very northern end of where crops can be grown. It's about 6 hours north of the border, the Canada-US border. We set up a co-op, grower-owned co-op. We don't call ourselves farmers, we call ourselves growers. It's a grower-owned co-op to reclaim our indigenous heritage, indigenous foods, eating culturally appropriate foods, and growing extra other foods for the newcomers, growing their foods to sell to them. We set up the co-op with a lot of advice and mentoring from our elders. And we've been growing for going on 8 years now in Musqueam. And we're now at a point where we're able to make a living, grow our food that we eat, grow our culturally appropriate food, relearning that, reclaiming our relationship with the plants, doing the ceremonies, and relearning and redoing the deal we make with the plants through the ceremonies. It's not just about the growing the food, though. That's just a short part of the story. What we're really doing in Musqueam is growing community and growing people. The people that have come through our project are more resilient, they're more self-sufficient, they're trained, they're able to take care of themselves, they're out there working, and they're not on welfare anymore. In Canada, we have a welfare system. So the people are taking care of themselves now and eating properly. So when we set out to do this, you know, for 130 years, we've seen projects coming and going. Our elders have shared with us the knowledge that we didn't know hunger until we put ourselves under the care of the newcomers, under the care of the Crown in Canada. Once we put ourselves under their care, that's when we started knowing hunger. And people came to our territory, people came to our reserve since the 1800s to try and help us, help us to have enough food and eat better. And they came with projects, and they did projects, and one after another, and they all failed. They came in and told us what to do. And the projects were just like, what our people call them, are like Band-Aid projects. They go for a while, there's some success for a while, but there's no resiliency, there's no sustainability in the projects. So we didn't want to do that back in 2005 when we set up the co-op. We have many partners, funding partners, including Heifer International, and so we looked around. We looked around to see the landscape, what's happening out there, and we did see some communities. There were some communities that were runaway successes, but most Indigenous communities mired in poverty. So we dug deeper and we did our research. We looked for a couple of years to find out what are the best practices, what should we be doing. We didn't want to have a project that would go for just a few years. And what we found was that the most successful projects were not about the food, they're about sovereignty and nation building. If you do sovereignty and nation building as a stated goal, as a basis for the project in Indigenous country, that's going to vastly increases your chances for success. That's exactly what we did. We did sovereignty and nation building. And there are 5 strategies for sovereignty and nation building. You have to remember you're dealing with people that are colonized to an extent, and the governments of the United States and Canada are still trying to colonize and still trying to assimilate us and still practicing genocidal policies on us. So what worked, what is working in the successful communities are the for sovereignty and nation building are, number one, having stable institutions and policies. You don't make ad hoc decisions. You set up your governance in a way that you have stable institutions. The second one is having a fair and effective dispute resolution. In my community, we have a long history of restorative justice. We have peacekeepers and peacemakers to work within our co-op. The whole point of this nation building is to train the core group in the co-op to be an example for the rest of the community. A third strategy of sovereignty and nation building is separation of business and politics. Many times in tribal governments and tribal areas, we don't see that. We see the government mixed in and trying to do business when we elect them to be political leaders. You know, they generally don't have the strengths in business. The fourth strategy is to have a competent staff or competent bureaucracy. You get the training or you train your people. Our people are trainable. You can train people for anything, but the key is to get the training. In our cooperative, we sought out and seek the training that we needed, the training in accounting, the training in business management, the training in marketing, all the skills that we needed. And the fifth, and I would say the most important strategy in sovereignty and nation building, is to have a cultural fit, a cultural match of that governance. A governance within that co-op or the governance within that nation. What we have out there now is a form of governance that's imposed on us by the government of Canada or the government of the United States. It doesn't look anything like the participatory democracy that our people practiced before contact. In the Cree form of government, the women were in authority, the clan mothers, the grandmothers. They selected or elected from their clan the people who would serve on council and the chief, and they were servants, they were not decision makers. The dominant form of governance is a representative democracy. You elect a representative to go and make decisions for you. And if you don't like the way they make decisions, you change them next election, or you try and change them next election. That's what they imposed on us, and still today, it's still imposed on us today in these two countries. That is not conducive to sovereignty and nation building. People don't buy into that government. They don't invest of themselves in that community when it's imposed governance from the outside. It's not a cultural match. Generally, it puts the men in charge, when our system is the women in authority, the women in charge. So in these projects, half the decision makers are women, at least half, and half the participants. When you empower the women in these communities, it's transformational. It transforms that family, it transforms that Indian nation, it transforms that state, it transforms that country, that nation. So that's what we're seeing in the projects. We're seeing that transformation. And we're seeing the example being set by the co-ops for the Indian nation itself to see. The Cree people don't value individualism, individual success. What we would value is the whole group succeeding. We would value that more, teaching by example rather than role modeling, showing by example. So that's what the co-op does. The co-op is is training people and getting people versed in sovereignty and nation building, the sovereignty of the Cree people, making us stronger, making us more cohesive, and that's what we need. That's what we need to be self-determining. That's the only way we can be self-determining, rather than using somebody else's government to make decisions, somebody else's way of governing. That has only served to divide us. You know, this representative democracy. You have winners and losers in every decision, and all the losers vote against you next election. So in our system, in our cultural match system, our cultural fit system, everybody's behind the decision. You know, you sit and you talk it out until you reach consensus. And then there's no losers in that decision. And if you know your brother's going to go there and veto something, well, you don't need to go. It's not going to go on without your consent, without the consensus. So that's what works. We see it over and over and over again in Indian nations in the United States and Canada. If you're going to be doing projects with First Nations and Indian nations and working in Indian country, well, the success is going to depend on how you, on your implementation of sovereignty and nation building right from the start. Thank you.